She stopped trying to be loved, and suddenly, every room felt her presence. Not because she changed her look, not because she said the right thing, but because she no longer needed anything from anyone. She became the center of her own world, and that's when the world began to orbit her. This isn't magic. This is an energetic truth, and Carl Jung understood it long before it became a trend. The feminine energy becomes most powerful, not when it's chasing love, but when it no longer needs it. We live in a world that teaches women to perform. Smile more. Be agreeable. Don't be too much. Be soft, but also sexy. Strong, but not intimidating. Be independent, but not so independent that you don't need anyone. Have opinions, but not ones that make people uncomfortable. And underneath all that pressure, something essential gets buried. The authentic feminine frequency. Not the image, not the technique, not the effort, but the silent, powerful energy that comes from a woman who no longer negotiates with her worth. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation. It's when a person begins to reclaim all the parts of themselves that were once rejected or hidden. It's the psychological journey from who you think you should be to who you actually are. And for women, that includes the part of you that was taught to chase love as a form of validation. The part that was told your worth was determined by whether someone chose you. The part that learned to make yourself smaller, softer, more palatable to earn affection. This video isn't about dating strategies. It's not about techniques to make him chase you instead. It's about the deep psychology behind why you're most magnetic when you stop trying to be. It's about what happens energetically when you stop abandoning yourself for love. Let's walk through what really changes when you stop chasing love. It doesn't look like chasing at first. It looks like being accommodating. Like texting first because you don't want to seem uninterested. Like adjusting your tone to avoid any possibility of conflict. Like wondering why he hasn't replied, and immediately blaming yourself for saying too much or not enough or the wrong thing entirely. It looks like scanning his face for approval when you speak. Like changing your weekend plans when he suggests something else. Like pretending you don't mind when he's late again. But energetically, you're chasing. Your energy is constantly reaching outside of yourself, seeking confirmation that you're worthy of love. You're unconsciously asking, am I enough? Am I too much? What do I need to adjust about myself to keep this person interested? And Carl Jung warned us, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. When you resist your fear of being alone, your actions will unconsciously orbit around it. Even when you're smiling, even when you're saying, I'm fine, even when you think you're playing it cool, your shadow, the part of you that doesn't believe you're enough without love, speaks louder than your words. It whispers through your body language. It seeps through your energy. It broadcasts itself in ways you don't even realize. Pause here. Did a part of you just whisper, this is me? Let me tell you about Maya. She's 31, works in marketing, and has what everyone calls the perfect life. Beautiful apartment, successful career, travels to interesting places, and posts photos that get hundreds of likes. But Maya has a secret. Every time she meets someone new, she becomes a different version of herself. With David, she was the cool girl who loved horror movies and never got jealous. With Marcus, she was suddenly into hiking and outdoor adventures. With James, she pretended not to care about commitment and said she was just seeing where things go. Each time, she thought she was being adaptable, flexible, easygoing, the kind of woman men would want to be with. What she was really doing was abandoning herself. Maya's shadow held a belief she'd carried since childhood. If they see the real me, they'll leave. This belief didn't come from nowhere. It was forged in 100 small moments growing up. When her father came home stressed from work and her natural exuberance was too much. When her mother sighed and said, Maya, not everyone needs to hear all your thoughts. When the boy she liked in 7th grade told his friends she was weird because she read philosophy books. When her college boyfriend said her emotions were exhausting and she learned to smile when she wanted to cry. So she gave them edited versions of herself, curated glimpses, the funny parts without the depth, the light without the complexity. The agreeable parts without the opinions that might create friction. She became a master at reading rooms and becoming what they needed. But in the process, she lost touch with what she needed. And each man did leave. Not because they saw too much of her, but because they felt too little. How can someone fall in love with you when you're not even present? How can they miss you when you've never really been there? In Jungian terms, Maya was embodying what Jung called the wounded anima. The anima is the feminine aspect present in every psyche, the part that feels, connects, creates, and loves. But when the anima is wounded, she doesn't feel safe inside her own being. So she seeks safety in someone else's approval. She performs. She overgives. She attaches too quickly because she's terrified of losing what she thinks she needs to feel whole. She monitors his moods and adjusts herself accordingly. She gives up her own preferences to avoid disappointment. She becomes hypervigilant about signs of rejection, reading meaning into delayed text responses and canceled plans. Not because she's weak, but because she's scared she won't be chosen unless she becomes what he wants. And here's the paradox that Jung understood so deeply. The more you try to be the woman he'll love, the more you lose access to the woman he could feel. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, it means you're ready. Don't turn away, because there's something underneath this pattern that most people miss. Your shadow isn't your darkness. Your shadow is the part of you that you learn to hide because someone, somewhere, made you believe it wasn't acceptable. For many women, that shadow holds the belief, I am not enough as I am. This belief gets formed early and reinforced often. In families where love felt conditional on being good. In schools where standing out meant being targeted. In relationships where your authentic self was met with criticism or withdrawal. So you chase. You prove. You perform. You become the woman who texts first because you're afraid silence means disinterest. You become the woman who laughs at jokes that aren't funny because you're afraid your real humor is too sharp, too quick, too much. You become the woman who says, I'm fine, when you're falling apart because you're afraid your emotions are too intense, too complicated, too demanding. You learn to lead with your most palatable qualities and hide the parts that feel too raw, too real, too human. But Jung knew something profound. What we reject in ourselves, we unconsciously seek in others. When you chase love, you're not just seeking the person. You're seeking the part of yourself you abandoned to be lovable. You're trying to find in them the acceptance you've never given yourself. The unconditional love you've never felt you deserved. The security you think you can only get from external validation. There's an energetic cost to constantly trying to be what someone else wants. It's exhausting to monitor every word, every reaction, every moment of authentic response. It's depleting to live in a constant state of, am I doing this right? It's soul-crushing to realize you don't even know what you actually want anymore because you've spent so much time trying to want what would make you more lovable. Maya felt this cost, but couldn't name it for years. She would come home from dates feeling drained, even when they went well. She would find herself snapping at friends for minor things. She would lie in bed at night feeling empty, despite being surrounded by people who liked her, because when you're not being yourself, even positive attention feels hollow. When someone likes your performance, it doesn't feed your soul. It just reinforces the belief that your real self isn't good enough. Jung called this living unconsciously, operating from patterns that were formed to protect you, but now imprison you. Something changes the day you stop. Not because you plan to, not because you read a book or watched a video, but because you finally exhausted yourself with trying. The day you sit with yourself in the ache of unmet longing and say, I no longer want to be loved because I'm performing. I want to be loved because I'm present. That's the turning point. That's the moment your soul says, enough. You've carried this long enough. Let yourself be still for once. Maya's turning point came on a Tuesday. She was getting ready for a date, the first date that month, when she caught herself in the mirror. She was wearing an outfit that wasn't really her style, but that she thought looked date appropriate. She was practicing a laugh that wasn't really her laugh, but that sounded more feminine, more appealing. She was rehearsing stories that highlighted her fun side, while carefully editing out anything that might reveal her depth. And suddenly, she was exhausted. Not tired from dating, tired from being someone else, tired from the constant internal commentary. Is this too much? Is this not enough? What does he want me to be? She looked at herself in the mirror and for the first time in years, asked a different question. What do I want? The question hit her like a shock. She realized she hadn't asked herself that in so long. She wasn't even sure she knew the answer. So she canceled the date. Not because she didn't want love, but because she wanted to remember who she was before she started chasing it. That night, instead of going out, she sat in her apartment and cried. Not sad tears, but relief tears. The tears of someone who had been holding their breath for years and finally exhaled. The next few weeks were strange for Maya. Without the constant focus on dating, she had to face herself. All the parts she'd been hiding, not just from others, but from herself. She realized she actually hated horror movies and had only pretended to like them because David did. She discovered she preferred quiet evenings at home to the hiking and outdoor adventures she'd convinced herself she enjoyed. She remembered that she actually had strong opinions about politics, art, and life. Opinions she learned to soften or hide to avoid conflict. Jung called this process shadow integration, the reclaiming of parts of yourself that were split off and rejected. It's not comfortable work, because when you stop performing, you have to face the fears that made you perform in the first place. Maya had to sit with her terror of being alone. She had to feel the grief of all the times she'd abandoned herself. She had to confront the rage she felt at a world that had taught her to make herself smaller. But something miraculous happened as she did this work. The feminine energy isn't something you activate by being desirable. It's something that emerges when you stop abandoning your center. As Maya stopped trying to be what others wanted, she started accessing what Jung called her authentic feminine essence. Not the performance of femininity, not the cultural costume of what feminine should look like, but the raw, real, powerful energy that comes from a woman who is fully present to herself. You become magnetic not because you're doing something, but because you stop doing what disconnected you in the first place. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." When a woman chooses herself, in wholeness, in shadow, in truth, she becomes a frequency, and that frequency does the choosing for her. She doesn't chase. She vibrates. And the man who feels her isn't just attracted. He feels remembered, because in her presence, he meets the part of himself he forgot. The part that doesn't need to perform either. The part that can just be. This isn't about becoming unavailable or playing games. This is about energetic sovereignty. When you stop needing external validation, your energy changes. You stop broadcasting, "Please choose me," and start emanating, I choose myself. Jung called this integration, the moment when the conscious and unconscious minds stop fighting and start dancing. When you integrate your shadow, the part that was told it wasn't enough, you no longer need to prove you are. You simply are, and that being is magnetic in a way that doing never could be. Because most people are so used to performing, they've forgotten what authentic presence feels like. When they encounter it in you, it reminds them of something they've lost. It awakens something in them that they didn't even know was asleep. Let me explain the energetic difference. When you're performing, your energy is constantly reaching outward, seeking feedback, validation, confirmation that you're doing it right. It's anxious energy, grasping energy, energy that needs something from the other person to feel stable. When you're present, your energy is grounded in yourself. It's not reaching or grasping or needing. It's simply radiating from a place of fullness. People can feel this difference instantly, even if they can't articulate it. They feel peaceful around presence. They feel inspired around authenticity. They feel remembered around someone who has remembered themselves. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. The moment you stop needing love to complete you is the moment you become capable of real love. Not desperate attachment masquerading as love. Not the need to possess or be possessed, but the kind of love that comes from overflow rather than emptiness. When Maya stopped chasing, she didn't become cold or unavailable. She became present. She became whole. She became herself. And from that place, she could finally love from choice rather than need. She could be with someone because she wanted to, not because she had to. She could offer her gifts freely instead of using them as bargaining chips for affection. That's the difference. That's what makes the feminine energy so powerful when it's no longer chasing. It's no longer coming from lack. It's coming from abundance. The woman who chases is asking, "What can you give me?" The woman who is whole is asking, "What can we create together?" The woman who chases sees the other person as a solution to her problems. The woman who is whole sees the other person as a potential partner in joy. Jung called this relatedness versus relationship. Relatedness is two whole people choosing to share their wholeness. Relationship, in its immature form, is two half people trying to make one whole person. Modern neuroscience backs up what Jung intuited decades ago. When you're performing, your nervous system is in a constant state of hypervigilance. You're scanning for threats to your acceptance. You're monitoring for signs of rejection. Your brain is working overtime to maintain a facade. This activates your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Even on a good date, your body is stressed. When you're authentic, your nervous system can relax. You're not monitoring or managing or performing. You're just being. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response. Your body feels safe. Your mind feels clear. Your energy feels clean. And other people's nervous systems pick up on this. They feel safe around you because you feel safe in yourself. They can relax because you're relaxed. This is why authentic presence is so magnetic. It's not just energetically attractive. It's neurologically regulating. When you're chasing love, you don't realize you're sending out a signal. Please make me enough. That energy is heavy, not because you're not beautiful, but because it asks the other person to carry something you haven't yet held in yourself. It's the energy of incompleteness seeking completion, of emptiness seeking filling, of a wound seeking healing from outside sources. But Jung knew that no one else can complete what was never broken. They can only witness your wholeness. When you are whole, you don't need to ask. You don't need to say, "See me," because your stillness already says, "I see myself." And that kind of presence is unforgettable. It's the presence of someone who has come home to themselves. Someone who no longer needs external validation because they've learned to validate themselves. Someone who loves from overflow rather than emptiness. 6 months after Maya stopped chasing, she met Sarah at a coffee shop. Sarah was different. She wasn't trying to be charming or impressive. She was just present. Maya watched her interact with the world and noticed something she'd never seen before in a woman. When a barista got her order wrong, Sarah didn't laugh it off or say, "It's fine," the way Maya would have. She kindly but clearly asked for what she wanted. No apology. No making herself smaller to avoid inconveniencing anyone. Just a simple, "I order an oat milk latte, not regular milk. Could you remake this, please?" When a man approached their table and interrupted their conversation to ask for Sarah's number, Sarah didn't smile politely and endure it the way Maya had done 1,000 times. She looked at him directly and said, "We're having a private conversation. Please leave us alone." When he persisted, saying, "I just want to get to know you," Sarah's voice didn't get higher or more apologetic. It got clearer. "I said no. Please respect that." Maya watched in fascination. Here was a woman who wasn't afraid of taking up space, who wasn't afraid of having needs, who wasn't afraid of being direct, even when it might be difficult for others. Most remarkably, Sarah didn't seem to care whether the man thought she was nice or not. She cared about her own boundaries, her own comfort, her own truth, and far from making her seem cold or harsh, it made her magnetic, because she radiated something Maya had never seen before. The confidence of a woman who didn't need anyone else to complete her story. A woman who's done her shadow work isn't cold. She's clear. She doesn't ghost people because that would be cruel. She doesn't cling because that would be desperate. She doesn't shrink to be palatable because that would be false. She simply doesn't negotiate with energy that doesn't feel true. because her love is no longer for sale to the highest bidder. It's reserved for resonance. Jung understood that boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself in. When you know who you are, you don't need to defend against who you're not. You can simply choose what aligns with your truth. Sarah taught Maya something profound that day. You can be kind without being accommodating. You can be loving without being available to everyone. You can be feminine without being compliant. The feminine energy in its most powerful form isn't soft and yielding. It's soft and strong, receptive and discerning, open and boundaried. Take a moment here. What part of yourself have you silenced just to feel loved? Maya began to notice something after her months of not dating. Men started noticing her differently, not because she was trying to be noticed, but because she had stopped trying not to be. At work, she started speaking her mind in meetings instead of waiting to see which way the conversation was going. She wore clothes that felt like her, not like what she thought looked attractive to others. She laughed her real laugh, the one that was too loud and lasted too long and made other people smile without them knowing why. And suddenly, she became interesting, not because she was performing interest, but because she was genuinely interested in her own life. She stopped asking, "What do you think?" and started saying, "I think." She stopped saying, "I don't care, whatever you want," and started expressing preferences. She stopped making herself smaller in conversations and started taking up her full space. The strangest thing happened. People didn't find her too much. They found her refreshing. Because in a world full of people performing, authenticity stands out. In a room full of people trying to be liked, someone who likes themselves is magnetic. Jung taught that individuation, becoming who you truly are, isn't a destination. It's a daily practice of choosing wholeness over performance. Every day, you have a choice. Will I abandon myself to be loved? Or will I love myself enough to be authentic? Maya had to make this choice dozens of times a day at first. When someone asked her opinion, and her first instinct was to deflect. When she felt the urge to laugh at something that wasn't funny. When she wanted to say no, but felt the familiar pressure to say yes. Each time she chose authenticity over performance, she reclaimed a piece of herself. Each time she honored her truth instead of trying to be palatable, she integrated another fragment of her shadow. It wasn't easy, because the people who were used to the performing version of Maya weren't always comfortable with the authentic version. Some friends felt threatened by her newfound boundaries. Some colleagues didn't know what to do with her direct communication. Some family members tried to pull her back into old patterns. But Jung warned about this too. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The people who can't handle your authenticity were never meant to be in your authentic life. As Maya continued to choose herself, something unexpected happened. The women around her started changing too. Her friend Jessica started setting boundaries with her demanding boss. Her sister Emma stopped saying yes to every social obligation. Her co-worker Rachel started expressing her ideas in team meetings instead of staying silent. Jung called this the transcendent function, when individual healing creates collective transformation. When one woman stops abandoning herself, she gives other women permission to do the same. When one woman stops chasing love, she shows others that wholeness is possible. The feminine energy, when reclaimed, doesn't just heal the individual. It heals the collective wound that says women must perform to be loved. If this message stirred something in you, maybe it's because a part of you is ready to stop performing. Ready to stop trying to earn what you already deserve. Ready to come home to the woman you were before the world taught you to be someone else. Carl Jung believed that when we integrate the parts of ourselves we once rejected, we no longer chase love. We become it. Not the desperate, clinging kind of love that needs to possess, but the spacious, abundant kind of love that can afford to be discerning. The woman who stops chasing doesn't stop loving. She starts loving from overflow. She loves herself enough to speak her truth, even when it's uncomfortable. She loves herself enough to have standards that aren't negotiable. She loves herself enough to be alone rather than be with someone who doesn't see her full humanity. She loves herself enough to take up space, to have opinions, to feel her feelings fully instead of managing them for other people's comfort. And from that place, only the right frequency will find her. Because the kind of love that's attracted to performance isn't love at all. It's projection. It's attachment. It's the ego trying to complete itself through another person. But the kind of love that's attracted to authenticity, that's the love that can actually nourish you. That's the love that sees you and chooses you for who you are, not for who you pretend to be. A year later, Maya met someone, not at a bar or on a dating app, but in a bookstore, reaching for the same book on Jung's work on active imagination. They talked for 3 hours, not about surface things, but about the deep stuff, about shadows and integration, about the parts of themselves they were learning to love, about the journey from performance to presence. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't wonder if he would call, not because she didn't care, but because she was complete whether he did or not. She had become the center of her own world. And if he wanted to orbit that world, she would welcome him. But if not, her world would continue spinning just fine. That's the difference. The woman who chases is always wondering, what does he think of me? The woman who is whole is simply being, this is who I am. You don't need to prove you are lovable. You only need to be with the parts of you that were once told you weren't. The scared little girl who learned to be quiet. The teenage girl who learned to be agreeable. The young woman who learned to be accommodating. They're all still inside you, waiting to be reclaimed, waiting to be loved, waiting to be integrated into the full, complex, beautiful woman you are. That's where your real feminine energy lives. Not in the performance, not in the chase, but in the quiet, revolutionary act of choosing yourself. Journal with this. What would change in your life if you truly believed you were enough, exactly as you are right now? What would you say differently? What would you do differently? What would you stop tolerating? What would you start creating? These aren't just questions. They're invitations to step into the woman you've always been underneath the performance. Jung understood something that our culture has forgotten. The feminine energy in its most powerful form isn't about being wanted. It's about being whole. It's not about attracting someone to complete you. It's about being so complete that you attract someone who can dance with your wholeness rather than fix your brokenness. When you stop chasing love, you don't become unavailable. You become discerning. When you stop performing, you don't become difficult. You become real. When you stop trying to be perfect, you don't become flawed. You become human. In your humanity, your full, complex, beautiful humanity is exactly what the world has been waiting to love. And when you live from that place, you won't need to ask, why doesn't anyone love me? Because your life will be filled with what loves you back. Friends who appreciate your authentic laughter. Work that honors your full intelligence. Hobbies that feed your actual soul. And yes, eventually, someone who loves you not despite your complexity, but because of it. Let your energy speak. Let your truth rise. Let your shadow integrate. And let love find you where you've already found yourself. The feminine energy was never about being perfect. It was always about being whole. And wholeness, that's magnetic. That's powerful. That's what the world has been waiting to feel. If you're ready to stop chasing and start being, if you found yourself in Maya's story or felt something shift as we talked about integration, let me know in the comments. Your shadow isn't your enemy. Your authenticity isn't too much. Your wholeness is exactly what the world needs. The woman who stops chasing love doesn't lose her power. She reclaims it. Stop chasing love. Start being it. The world is waiting for the real you. And so is the love that's meant for your authentic self. Jung knew it. Maya learned it. And now you know it too. If this helped you see something about yourself you hadn't seen before, consider subscribing for more content that speaks to the deeper parts of your journey. Your journey back to yourself starts now.